Galactic scholars called the relic untranslatable. The human read it aloud casually, Doctor. Zethkar's 4 eyes narrowed as he examined the crystalline artifact for the 1000th time. The Vorthak scholar's tentacles trembled with frustration. As he set down his translation matrix, its screens flickering with error messages in 17 different galactic languages. Impossible, he muttered, his voice a series of harmonic clicks that the universal translator rendered into standard galactic. 3 centuries of study, and we're no closer to understanding this script. Around the vast archaeological chamber, aboard the research station Eternal Quest, dozens of the galaxy's finest linguists, archaeologists, and xenosociologists worked in hushed concentration. The crystalline archives of Zerion 7 had been discovered 50 years ago, containing what appeared to be the last records of an extinct civilization known only as the predecessors, a species that had vanished millions of years before any current galactic civilization had achieved spaceflight. The relic in question was a translucent blue tablet, roughly the size of a human palm, covered in flowing script that seemed to shift and dance when observed directly. Every known translation algorithm had failed. Every linguistic framework had proven inadequate. The script appeared to follow no recognizable pattern, no mathematical progression, no logical structure that any of the galaxy's greatest minds could decipher. Perhaps, suggested Dr. Lyra Thex, a Zephyrian linguist whose crystalline skull pulsed. With bioluminescent thought patterns, the script is not meant to be read at all. It could be decorative, ceremonial, negative, chittered Professor Vexilon, his insectoid mandibles clicking rapidly. The quantum resonance patterns suggest deep informational content. This contains knowledge. We simply lack the key to unlock. Thorson and Dr. Zethkar's primary eye stalk swiveled toward the chamber entrance as heavy footsteps echoed through the space. A figure approached, bipedal, relatively small, wearing the simple gray jumpsuit of a maintenance technician. The human. The scholarly assembly had been skeptical when the Terran Republic had requested permission to send a representative to observe the research. Humans were newcomers to galactic civilization, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 2 centuries ago. Their academic institutions were considered quaint by galactic standards, their scholars barely more than enthusiastic amateurs compared to species who had been studying the cosmos for millennia. This particular human, Dr. Sarah Chen, had arrived 3 days ago with minimal fanfare. She was a xenoarchaeologist from Terra's small but growing university system, specializing in what humans called comparative mythology. The galactic scholars had been polite but dismissive. What could a species that still used primitive chemical rockets for in-system travel possibly contribute to research that had stymied the greatest minds in known space? "Excuse me," Dr. Chen said, her voice soft but carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "I don't mean to interrupt, but I couldn't help overhearing your discussion." Dr. Zethkar's tertiary eyes rolled in barely concealed irritation. "Dr. Chen, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but this artifact has confounded our best theoretical linguists for decades. The script appears to be entirely unique, following no known grammatical or symbolic frameworks." Sarah nodded, approaching the display case containing the relic. "May I take a look?" Several scholars exchanged glances that, despite their vastly different physiologies, somehow all conveyed the same sentiment. Humor, the primitive. Dr. Thex gestured gracefully toward the case with one of her 4 arms. "Of course. Though I should warn you, extended observation of the script has been known to cause headaches in some species. The shifting patterns can be disorienting." Sarah smiled and leaned closer to the case, studying the dancing symbols with quiet intensity. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of environmental systems and the occasional clicking of Professor Vexilon's contemplative mandible grinding. After several minutes, Sarah straightened up and cleared her throat. "Well," she said casually, "it's not that complicated, actually." The silence in the chamber became absolute. "I beg your pardon?" Dr. Zethkar's voice rose to a pitch that made the universal translator squeal in protest. "The script," Sarah explained, pointing to a section of flowing symbols near the top of the tablet. It's written in what we humans would call free verse poetry. The reason your translation matrices are failing is because they're looking for logical, linear progressions. This isn't meant to be read like technical documentation or historical records. She paused, studying the symbols again. It's emotional content, metaphorical. The shifting you've observed isn't random. It's indicating rhythm, emphasis, emotional weight, like the way we might use italics or bold text, except much more sophisticated. Dr. Lyra Thex's bioluminescent patterns flickered rapidly, the Zephyrian equivalent of skeptical laughter. Dr. Chen, with respect, you cannot possibly expect us to believe that you've solved in minutes what has taken us. In twilight's embrace, we who touch the stars find rest, Sarah read aloud, her voice taking on a rhythmic, almost musical quality. Our children of thought sleep in crystal dreams, while darkness swimmers sing the last songs of home. The chamber erupted in chaos. Scholars shouted questions in a dozen languages while instruments beeped frantically as they registered the quantum resonance changes in the artifact. The symbols on the tablet had stopped their restless shifting and now pulsed gently in rhythm with Sarah's voice. How? Dr. Zethkar whispered, all four of his eyes fixed on the human. Sarah shrugged. Pattern recognition mostly. Plus, humans have a lot of experience with non-linear communication. Poetry, music, abstract art. We've always understood that not all meaning is logical. Sometimes the most important truths can only be expressed through feeling, metaphor, suggestion. She gestured to the tablet, which now glowed with a warm, steady light. Your people, all of your people, seem to approach language as a tool for conveying precise information. And that's not wrong, but it's not the only way to communicate. The predecessors appear to have embedded their final messages in artistic expression. They weren't trying to preserve technical data or historical facts. Sarah's voice softened as she continued reading. We leave these words like seeds in time's garden, hoping that somewhere, someone, hearts that dream as we dreamed, might hear our whispers across the void and know they are not alone. The silence that followed was different from before, not skeptical but wondering. Professor Vexilon's mandibles stopped clicking entirely. They were saying goodbye. More than that, Sarah said gently. They were reaching across millions of years to touch whoever might find these records. They wanted to be remembered not as a civilization of great achievements or terrible failures, but as people, beings who loved, who dreamed, who faced the end with hope that others would follow the paths they had begun. Dr. Zethkar found himself leaning closer to the case, seeing the symbols not as an unsolvable puzzle but as the final song of an entire species. Dr. Chen, he said quietly, would you be willing to read the rest? Sarah smiled and nodded. As her voice filled the chamber with the predecessor's final poem, a work of art that bridged the gap between extinction and memory, the greatest scholars in the galaxy learned something they had never been taught in their advanced institutions. Sometimes, the most profound truths could only be heard by those who remembered how to listen with their hearts, and sometimes it took the youngest voice in the room to speak the oldest wisdom of all. Word count: 1,147.